Following the great tradition of putting people off their dinner, today I thought I would show you how to make a poppable blister. It's one of those things I've been trying to do for a while, and I've finally figured out a way to make it look like a blister and pop like a blister as well. So if you're a little bit squeamish, this might not be the tutorial for you. You should probably stick to some of my bridal makeup tutorials. But if you're into special effects, I'm going to show you how to do this. First thing I'm going to start off with is some latex. Now normally you're not going to find very many blisters that are this big, unless they're somewhere like the back of your ankles from rubbing against your shoes. But just so that you guys can see really clearly what I'm doing, I'm going to be making it quite big and exaggerated so that it's easy to follow. I'm going to be using some blister gel, scooping some out and rolling it between my fingers. Then I'm going to be blending out the edges with a little spatula. Another thing which blends this out really nicely is just some water. So I'm going to be using my fingers to go around the edge after I've gone over it with the spatula to make sure that it's really neat. And then finally I'm going to go over with a brush to make sure that the edges are flawless and that there's a very nice transition from the blister gel onto my hand. After this, I'm going to move on to the latex, and I'm just going to be applying it with my fingers. For something like this, I prefer applying it with my fingers just because getting latex out of a brush is a nightmare and you're probably going to ruin it. And also I found that with my fingers it's much easier to get a nice texture on the edge and have it blend into my skin realistically. Another thing I should point out that it isn't that good to layer 2 or 3 coats with this. What I found is that when I layered 2 or 3 coats, the top layer became so thick it was very hard to puncture it later on, and so it didn't really look like skin, which, as you know if you've ever had a blister, is very easy to pop with a needle because the skin is so thin and taut, and the latex was just too rubbery, it had too much give in it, and so I couldn't pop it realistically. To add a little bit of colour to the blister, there are 3 different things that you can use. You could use a powder like what I'm using, you could even use a regular blush, it doesn't really make much of a difference. You could use a cream or you can use an alcohol activated palette. Now I'm going to be using an alcohol activated palette just because there are problems with using cream and powder. As you can see, this is what it looks like with the powder. It's still realistic, it's still got that nice very sore look and you can still pop it. But here's one where I've done it with cream, and as you can see where I've pressed, I've accidentally lifted the colour with my fingers. Now you don't have that problem with an alcohol activated palette, and as the name implies, you use alcohol. And another thing that I like about it is it's very much like using a watercolour and very easy to layer the colours over. Now around the edges here I also went over a little too much with the colour and it looks too irritated. So what I'm going to do later on to just lift that colour up is just dabble my finger in that alcohol and then gently lift that colour, and that's something you can't always do if you're using a powder or a cream. Another reason I like the alcohol palette is it's extremely hard wearing. You applied it with alcohol and you're going to need alcohol to remove it. Regular makeup remover isn't going to do the trick. So it's very hard wearing, and it's very good if you're doing this on an actor and there's a chance it might accidentally get grazed or rubbed against something. It's not going anywhere. And then after that, just to finish off and make the blister look all oozy, you can take some Vaseline and apply this in the centre of the blister. And then that's pretty much all you have to do. One of the reasons I like this technique a lot as well is that once you've popped the blister, it's still going to have that layer of skin which is going to bunch together exactly as if you'd popped a real blister. So now you can go ahead and freak people out, preferably before dinner, right before having a soup, and check out how strong their stomach is.